Gonna have a conversation with Lucio about the pets related work that is happening at IAB Europe. And so just to start off, Lucio, can you tell us a little bit about the working group, what it is, what you're trying to achieve as it relates to pets, and where the group currently is in its journey?
Sure, and thanks for the question. And well, I'm a big fan of the Privacy Lab and what you just showed. And well, but at IAB Europe, we are doing, let's say, something different. And so just to give you a bit of background, so the working group is a collaborative effort that we are leading at IAB Europe. And what we are really trying to achieve is to get everyone on the same page. So you can think about establishing common definitions, creating a robust industry narrative, and also, for example, mapping out how usable these technologies actually are of course, in digital advertising. So our mission, I will say, is to push pets adoption in the industry because they can really be a good solution for a privacy by design approach. And like that will mean keeping ad relevance and so from the business side while protecting personal data. Right now, we are in the second phase of a 3 steps roadmap. And I would say this is the main phase. And we are currently focused on expanding a repository of practical use cases and also researching auditability mechanisms. All of this is then going to culminate in our, let's say, primary deliverable, which is a kind of formal guide to pets in digital advertising, which is meant to be a resource both for technical and non-technical stakeholders. So yeah, that's a brief overview of our roadmap and where we stand right now.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. And one of the, I would say, challenges for those in our industry investing more into pets, like the being able to play with it is one thing, which is why we worked in the privacy lab. But the other thing is just, I would say, like regulatory uncertainty, just meaning like reactions from regulators to pets. And so that I know is one of the big themes that of the meeting itself. It's like the policy case for pets, right? Like potentially enabling legitimate interest as a legal basis rather than relying on consent. I don't know. Like, how do pets actually help make the case for legal bases beyond consent, which is what most of the industry, currently operates under?
Yeah, no, indeed, that is very much the case. And let's say the policy case is quite a big topic for us because one of like a central objective of the group is to demonstrate how pets can reduce privacy risks. So if you and I mean, you showed it with examples and the privacy lab. They do really provide mathematical and in any way technical means to turn legal requirements into, so to say, verifiable code. So on one side, you protect personal data, but you still allow companies to monetize advertising. And yeah, I believe this is important for a number of reasons. But then, as you were correctly pointing out, specifically regarding legitimate interest, I think this is. I mean, it's important to mention that, like just by using pets doesn't automatically mean a positive legitimate interest assessment, but of course it can strongly support it. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go into legal requirements here, but normally the legitimate interest assessment, it's made of it's called a three-part test. So the purpose, the necessity, and the balancing test. And for both the necessity and the balancing test, so pets can really strongly support that. So this means that if pets reduce those risks, for example, by processing pseudonymized data sets, then regulators could allow more flexibility to avoid like the massive reliance on consent or consent mechanisms, which are what are usually called consent fatigue, which I would say this is a kind of big win-win situation. So yeah, I would say this is, let's say, the policy side of our working group and the way we think pets can help using other legal bases.
So continuing on that thread just a bit more, because, right, like the thing that we were just talking about is that adoption of pets, costly, we've already mentioned potentially costly, I should say. And then already also mentioned, without sort of additional insight onto what regulators think about leveraging pets from a privacy perspective. That's what we're hearing. So like regulatory incentives, that's what's going to be needed to drive adoption. And so what would you say those incentives actually need to look like to move the needle?
So basically, I would say that, and probably you showed it already with the homomorphic encryption increasing like 14 times the computational power, so to say. And so this is to say that adopting pets is costly. It requires investments, both, let's say, in technology, but also in specialized expertise. So I will say, and we at IAB Europe and in the working group, we will say that to drive some more like adoption, like industry-wide adoption, I will say that some sort of formal recognition is welcome and actually needed. Meaning that regulators should formally recognize the implementation of pets as an evidence of what's called data protection by design and by default. For example, the OECD, there is a very quite extensive but very interesting paper from the OECD, and they already recognizes pets for this, and they describe them as a solution to that protect data confidentiality while allowing information to be processed, which is what we just saw and mentioned before. And yeah, we believe that this same approach should be more widely recognized. And then an additional point is guidance, which I think is important because regulators could provide some more practical guidance on implementing pets, which is currently missing. And this could eventually also be supported by some kind of mitigation in enforcement, meaning that if a company is using pets, then that should be considered as a mitigating factor during, for example, that's for Europe, but as a GDPR during a GDPR investigation. So to sum it up, like I would say, like some formal recognition, practical guidance, and mitigation in enforcement would be some incentives for businesses to adopt pets.
So another thing, in switching gears, you mentioned this already as well a little bit when you talked about what the group is focused on, but auditability, right? Like that keeps coming up as a concern. And so open sourcing attestation features floated as possible solutions. Like where does the industry need to land on this in order to make pets credible as compliance tools? Because that is a real thing that's come up multiple times. Like, is this black box?
Exactly.
How can we audit this?
Yeah, Yeah, I think this is really a concern, and you can really see from regulators and also civil society, like seeing, like, well, referring to pets as a kind of black box, and for example, some server-side processing is seen as a less auditable than client-side methods, which, I mean, it's at least arguable, I will say. But
it doesn't have to be, right?
no, exactly, and I believe, like, in order to make them some credible compliance tools, I believe the industry needs to use, let's say, a combination of proofs, so to say. So, well, first of all, as you also showed, mathematical proofs, like the one we saw, or multi-party computation or differential privacies. They give you mathematical proofs, or the auditable noise parameters that you can show. And then you can have logs, and of course those can be auditable too. For example, similar, like trusted execution environments, they have, as you mentioned, the attestation, which is basically a proof that code is running securely. And also, as you mentioned, I think a third point will be a third very important point will be open sourcing the technology, because that could really build trust and address those transparency concerns. So yeah, I believe, let's say, a mix of like technology, mathematical proofs, logs, and attestations, and open sourcing will be the right mix to increase pets' credibility.
Okay. And so the last question for you is, so I think you talked about measurement and audience targeting as sort of like the priority use cases. So once the implementation guide is out, what would success look like to you? Like, what would you tell the industry is actually who is actually, doing something with these tools?
Yes. So indeed, what we're trying to produce is a practical guide. So that's why we identified measurement and audience targeting, retargeting, as being like the ones we are gonna use as let's say examples. So like, once this is all finished and released and public, I would say that like success is not won't be easy to measure just like that. But I would say that once the guide is out, we can look at a few hopefully key shifts in the ecosystem, in the digital advertising ecosystem. And well, first I will say a kind of narrative shift. So basically moving from the as we just mentioned, from the perception of pets being kind of complex academic research topics to more practical and auditable compliance tools. And then, so that's probably the first one. And then I would say standardization, meaning that we would really welcome the widespread adoption of common standards. So again, modern measurement and targeting, making use of TEs, on-device processing, differential privacy, multi-party secure multi-party computation, and so on. So you can, for example, think about pair, so the publisher-advertiser identity reconciliation, which is also a Tech Lab initiative, and or on-device conversion measurement, or trusted execution environment. So all of these, let's say, standardized approaches, as in like true success, will be evidenced by seeing those tools deployed in real-world scenarios, like data clean rooms, for example. So where personal data from data subjects stay pseudonymous, but the business utility is preserved, of course, with the trade-offs that you were mentioning that you were showing actually during the demo. So yeah, that's what makes full sense and as a goal for us, and what we are trying to achieve.
Great. And I would say that that's also a good call to action for folks to join the working group at IAB Europe if they would like to participate in this. And for folks on the webinar today, everything I showed today, Privacy Lab, available right now in the tools portal. And there's a link that was just dropped in the chat as well. So we encourage you to take a look at it, play with it. I know, Lucio, you have gone in and played with it as well. So now we are happy to open it up to audience questions if anyone does have questions that they'd like to ask. All right, maybe I distracted you all on the webinar today by giving you that link, and you're all in there in the tools portal playing with the 3 pets that we showcased today. Seems like there are no questions, so Lucio, thank you for participating today. Oh, we do have one
Yes, I think
question. Is there a minimum size for data sets to be matched? I guess, Lucio, do you want me to take that one? I can take that one.
Please.
So is there a minimum size for data sets to be matched, or what would be your recommendation on that? Sorry, that's the follow-up to that question. I'm going to answer live as well. So this is one of the reasons why we've actually set up the privacy lab. I don't know that there's a clear answer that's going to fit everyone's particular use cases. Sorry, that's a little bit of a hand-wavy answer, if I'm being honest. But ultimately, like, that's going to differ depending on some of the things that I mentioned earlier, which is, what level of privacy would you be looking for versus utility? That's like often the trade-off. And so it's hard to recommend like a minimum size, I would say here. All right, we'll give it maybe like 10 more seconds for any other additional questions. Otherwise, I encourage, again, everyone to go forth and play with it using either the sample data, use those levers, slide epsilon back and forth, etc., or upload your own data sets to play with these pets as well. And thank you again, Lucio, so much for talking about the work that IAB Europe is doing around pets.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and well, bye everyone.
Thanks all.